Okay, I have a surprise for all of you on the She Finds Joy podcast today. It's kind of a monumental day. I have, for the first time on the She Finds Joy podcast, I am interviewing a man. Yes, his name is Steve Bollar, a.k.a. Stand Tall Steve. And he is an educational thought leader, former superintendent of schools, principal, author, and a school culture and motivation expert. He is known for his quick wit, creative thought, and humorous personality. Now, I just have to tell all of you who are listening, you're like, but wait, I'm not a teacher. I'm not an educator. Is this episode going to be for me? Well, I'm going to tell you it absolutely is for you because Steve is all about motivation, leadership, and really how we can use our attributes and our values to live a life that feels really good to who we are on the inside out. And so he's also the author of a leadership book called Stand Tall Leadership. And I love that he openly shares his knowledge, his experiences, and his creativity with others. So, Steve, welcome to the show. You are the first ever man to join us.
Hey, this is exciting. Thank you so much. Here I am. I'm glad to be here. I am so happy to be here. This is exciting for me.
This
Very
says a lot
exciting.
about you, Steve, because what happened was you reached out to me to interview me for, was it a virtual summit you were doing, or was it your podcast? It was your podcast.
Yeah, a podcast. Stand Tall Leadership Show.
Yeah, the Stand Tall Leadership podcast. And then we had just this natural flow. And we both know that while we're very passionate about education and students and impacting and influencing culture within schools, there was like way more to us than even that. And that's we had this rapport, right?
Yes, it was crazy. Yes. It's like certain people that you just come in contact with and the flow just happens. And that's exactly what it was when you and I were connecting. The flow just happened.
So how do you go from being a school teacher to being a superintendent to running the Stand Tall Leadership Academy, basically? Or, tell me where this comes from. Give us the backstory to you.
Sure. Yeah. So I my career, so to speak, started in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. I started off as an art teacher. I went to Kutztown University for art education. I actually knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an art teacher. So I was very fortunate that I got a job right out of school at Lawrenceville Elementary School. So I got a job there. Now, for those who don't know what I look like, I am a 6'7" bald black guy. I'm a tall guy. I look like a basketball player. I just do. I look like I walk right off of the court. 6'7", black guy, bald head. That's what I am. So being that, I was in this elementary school in Lawrenceville. I love what I did. Nobody looked like me where I was, and it was perfectly okay. I embraced it, and I just loved it. So as an elementary art teacher, I thought that it was the end-all job. I had an evaluation one day from my principal, and he said to me, he says, make sure you go back to school, get your master's in something. And I had no idea. I was, 24, 25. I was like, okay. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. He says, you could be a principal. I said, really? I could be a principal? He says, yeah, why not? Because I never heard of an art teacher becoming a principal. Art teachers just say it, what I'm saying? It's like, it's a dream job. You throw a party every 40 minutes, so so I went back to school. I started looking at administrators. I started studying them, and I realized I don't like administrators. I found them, many of them were unimaginative. They didn't take risks. They weren't fun. It was very formal, and I didn't like that. So I said, you know what? I'm going to be the administrator who does it differently. And so that's the reason why I got into administration. That was my road into it. I went back, got my master's, I became an assistant principal at a middle school. Then I got my first principalship at a pre-K to 5 building. And then I moved on to an upper elementary building where I was a district where I was there for 8 years, eventually assistant superintendent and superintendent. And I did things differently. I did things completely differently. That's how I rolled.
Now, okay. So I want to know, because I talk a lot about how we all have these paths that we're supposed to follow in life. We go,
Mhm,
this is how you get from A to Z. You go from A to B and B to C and C to D,
mhm,
and you follow
mhm.
this path and you do all the things right. And then that is what leads you to success. And so what I hear you saying is, like, you have more of a zigzaggy personality. You have more of a, like, I'm actually going to do everything different than what I've been told to do. Is that right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I mean, you're right. It's very zigzaggy. But my thing is this, and this is the way I look at a lot of things in life and such. I look at different experiences that are there. I try to get a good understanding of what the history of whatever that experience might be or what it's really like, and then I determine what parts of it I think are good and what parts of it I don't like. Well, you know what? I'm going to do the things that I think it's right, that I like, even in that situation. My first assistant principal position, first assistant, I was a vice principal at a middle school. The principal, she was a very, she was a younger principal, but she was very old school in the way that she led the building.
Yes.
I'm
And
going to yell
explain
at
what
this
that
kid.
looks
I'm going to
like.
get on
Explain what
this
that looks
kid.
like.
Well, I'm going to yell at this kid. I'm going to get on this kid. Everybody get in line. Everybody do things right. I'm in charge. That kind of attitude. And I was just looking at it like, you know what? And I don't like that. I'm going to be a different kind of administrator. So I looked at, even though she was a good mentor, you mentored me in the things I don't want to do. And so therefore I kind of go in a different direction with that. And that's how I see a lot of things in life.
So, tell us how you lead differently, what that looks like.
Mhm.
I want you to explain that first, and then I'm going to have some back end questions for you. So, like,
Okay.
what does that look
Mhm.
like to lead differently?
Well, in leading differently, what I one of the things that's most important to me is my level of integrity and what it is I respect and value. Integrity and respect and value is the cornerstones of absolutely everything that I do. Once you've
Mhm.
identified what it is that you respect and value, you can, in what your integrity level is and what that level is, I go through making my decisions based off of that. One of the quotes that I heard from, I think it was Roy Disney that came up with it. When your vision is clear, decisions are easy. When your vision is clear,
Mm.
decisions are easy. So once you have your vision, once you have what you respect and value, once you have what it is that you think is the core important to you, the decisions that you make are easy. Does it fit within your vision and what you respect and value, or doesn't it? If it doesn't, then I'm not going to do it, or I'm going to find another way to make that happen. How can I make certain decisions that are not only strategical good decisions, but connect me to people? And that's another thing. I love people. How do I connect to people? How do I make it better that we have a quality relationship from it? Sometimes what it is that I do might not be exactly what you want and what you think is might be best, but I don't want to ruin our relationship. You don't have to ruin a relationship over it. We can make these positive things happen.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit further. So
Okay.
give me an idea of something that you respect and value and how that plays out in your everyday decision making.
All right. One of the things I respect and value wholeheartedly is I respect and value humor. This is something that's important in my life. I mean, I know a lot of times when you think of leadership, you think I respect, strategy. I respect growth. I respect and value humor. I
Mhm.
love to laugh. I've tried all the emotions. Humor is one that I like. So when I'm making decisions and I'm making certain things happen, I'm going to find a way to see if I can make someone smile within that. I'm going to find a way to see if I can find humor in it, appropriate humor, appropriate. And that's very important to me. So it manifests itself in my decisions, in my actions.
So I love that rather than try, okay, so let's back up. When I was
Mhm.
getting my
Okay.
I was getting my administrative degree because I had
Mhm.
leadership skills. Like I knew I loved leadership. Like as the classroom teacher,
Mhm.
I was always studying progressive topics. And then a lot of times my principal was like, "Hey Kim, will you present on this? Will you present on that?" And like I loved sharing
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
whatever newfound knowledge. And I
Mhm.
did, so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go become a principal. But or get my administrator's license. But then I was
Right.
like, oh my gosh, like I would never want to be a principal, because like I have it in my mind
Hmm.
that like you have to be super straight laced. Um,
Hmm.
you have to, in my mind, there's this idea of the personality that you have to have in order to be a principal.
Hmm.
And I was never even like, I was always that teacher who was pushing the limits. I was always that teacher who, like you said, I was giggling and laughing and doing wild, outlandish things in the classroom. And
Hmm.
so I kind of had this idea like, oh, I could never be a principal because I would have to change who I am. And so what you're saying is
Right.
you saw that, but then you decided to just take on that leadership, but also make sure that it aligns to who you are, rather than trying to fit yourself in this box of how you're supposed to behave, act,
Oh,
lead.
yes. You're
Which,
you're spot on. That's exactly what I did. Because I was where you were when I was a teacher. I looked at administrator before I decided to go into it. I was like, all right, hey, let me check these administrators out. Oh
yeah.
my! I was like, oh,
Yeah,
it is
like you have to
straight
be
laced. It's just
serious. You have to be like a
I'm
serious person. You have
yeah.
to be very grounded. You have to be totally
Mm-hmm.
emotional, actually almost emotionless, right?
Yep.
And I'm like,
Emotional less.
shit,
Yep. Yeah.
I
Yep.
am not any of those
Yeah.
things. And this is so
Exactly. And that's what
interesting.
made me want to do it. And that's what made me want to do it 1,000. I was like, yes, if I can get into that position and I can be Steve in that position, holy crap, what I could do. That's my thought. I was just like, and now mind you, please don't get it wrong. When I got in that position, I hit a brick wall.
Yeah, I want to
People are
know about
not,
that. Like, did you get pushback? Did people like,
oh,
were people upset with
it,
you?
yeah, who you telling? Yes. If people were like, this, you're not being very principal like.
Ooh.
I got that. You're not being very principal like. I'm not. No. And I said, well, good thing I'm not a principal yet. Because I wasn't at the time. Somebody said I was a vice principal. I said, well, good thing I'm not a principal yet. And they're like, well, you'll never get there. I said, okay, thanks for letting me know that. And I always, yeah, I've gotten pushback. I've had I had my superintendent one time come and say to me, it's just like, I don't think that, your staff is going to respect you with you continue to behave this way. I said,
Yes.
behave what way? She says, you're walking around the school wearing superhero costumes.
I love it.
She says, she says, you're dancing all the time. She says, there's a moment that you need to be serious. I says, I'm serious when I have to be. I can, I said, look, I'm the friendliest and the meanest person in this building. It's completely up to you which one you get.
I
And,
love
and it's nothing wrong with switching it up. There's nothing wrong with that.
that.
And
Right.
there's times like when I would talk to my staff at my one school, I was there for 8 years as the building principal. I came up with two different personas with my staff. I said, there's Mr. Bollar and then there's Steve.
Mm,
And they got it. Mr.
yes.
Bollar says, get this done. It needs to be done now. Here are your timelines. Here's our outcomes. Make it happen. Steve says, I hope y'all get together afterwards and go for a drink because I'm coming with y'all.
Oh.
And they understood what that meant. And it's like, why not frame your leadership around what it is? Don't forget what the framework of leadership is. Yes, I got that. But you can be you in that every
Oh,
time.
I love that. See, that I took a totally different road. So I was a teacher, then I was a literacy coordinator, and all I wanted to do was become a curriculum director. I wanted to bypass the whole principal assistant principal
Mm-hmm.
because one, I knew I wasn't like a serious type, and I would display emotion, and I felt like I didn't have any of the attributes that I needed to actually be that particular principal. I kept telling
Mm-hmm.
myself, like my friend Laura, who's the principal, who I really adore, but like her skill set is, she's very serious and she's not
Mm-hmm.
very emotional, and she's very grounded, and she really thinks through things before she acts on them. And I just kept telling myself, like, why can't I just be like Laura Noble? Like, why can't I just be her? And then I could have that kind of job, but I just couldn't do it, Steve. And so then on
Mm-hmm.
top of it, I had two white men who were at the central office. And let me just tell you, if anybody triggered them, it was Kim Strobel.
Mm.
Like,
Mhm.
well, she can never be a principal. We saw her on the golf course and she was wearing some short shorts.
Mm. See, I would have hired you. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
you would have hired me
Oh
in my
my gosh,
legs,
she's
wouldn't you
exactly what
have?
I need. Yeah,
That's
I know.
exactly what I need.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, like, I actually had to go outside of my hometown and I
Yeah.
landed a curriculum job because I let two people, two, for lack of a better word, good old white boys
Mm.
determine that I wasn't the good fit. And that if I ever wanted a job like that, I needed to completely change my personality and never share anything about my personal life. Like, I'm an overshare,
Mhm.
Kim, you can't do any of that stuff. And so, unlike you, I first tried to make myself fit the system.
Yeah.
And then when I couldn't make myself fit the system, I went somewhere else where I was hired by a female who wasn't so triggered by me. But even then, like, I still wasn't able to bring my whole flair to what I do. And I never felt the
Mm.
freedom to do that until I launched my own business. So
Yeah.
I want to know what is it in you that had the courage to just be who you were out of the gate? Like, that's crazy to me. Like, I feel nervous for you just thinking about it.
Well, one of the things throughout my life, I've always been very creative. I'm a creative person. I have a degree in art. People don't realize I'm a classically trained artist. I can paint or draw absolutely anything. I'm also a musician. I played trumpet for many years. So I'm in the arts. And
You are
part
for
of being
sure not admin material. Just hearing
exactly.
that.
No, I don't fit it anyway. Give me a tree, I'll hug it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So but actually, that's my brother. He's more of that. I'm a little different than that. Anyway, because he has a degree in theater.
Ooh, that's even worse.
Yeah, I know. And here's the kicker. My dad has a degree in mathematics and physics, and my mother was a registered nurse. Completely
What?
opposite.
And then
I know.
they created these two kind of right-brained kids.
Woo! Oh, we were out there. Yeah. Oh, totally. 100%. So anyway, so as far as my entire life has always revolved around creativity. I love being creative. I love seeing things differently. But yet, I think from my father's perspective, specifically my father was also in the military. All right.
Mm.
So as far as having values, straight lace, make sure things are done, get your job, those kind of things. I think between those two things, it allowed me to have a certain level of confidence because I knew how to operate within the straight laced, get things done, don't move. I was even in the Sea Cadets for a while, where my dad enrolled us into my brother and I in Sea Cadets. My brother didn't do as
What
well
is
with it.
that? What are Sea Cadets?
Sea Cadets, it's a version of the Navy, but for younger kids. Really, it is. There's the Sea Cadets, there's the Civil Air Patrol, there's different ones that are out there. I was in the Sea Cadets.
Okay.
And I even a couple of my summers I went to the Coast Guard camp and I was out on boats and shot guns. I mean, I was military, right? So I think those two balances allowed me to, understand the two different worlds. Now, to your question, what gave me the courage to go and do that? I've always been in leadership positions. I was in student council my entire career. I was a class president of my, in my college, and I felt like, I want to do some leadership things. I've chosen education as my wheelhouse. I've found, I got to give it a go. I got to give it a go. And I've always thought in my head throughout my life, why not me? Why not? I mean, on top of all this, here's another little piece with me that nobody knows. I'm dyslexic. I have dyslexia, right?
Wow.
I did not find out I had dyslexia until I was in college.
Oh my gosh. So
And
you weren't like a straight A student
oh
then?
gosh, no, I rocked a solid C, D. I wasn't F, but every now and then I rocked out some B's, but no. And like here's my brother and sister, their grades were horrible on their own. So I look like a saint in my house. So that's why, you know what I mean? So, but growing up, I never understood why I couldn't academically do the things everyone else. But I'm like, I used to say to myself, why not me? Why not me? And I was just like, no, I wouldn't get down on myself. I'm like, I could do this. And I would push myself. So therefore, when I got to school and I got a job and I started looking at leadership, I went right back to what I knew. Why not me? Why not? Why not? And so that's
So
where it is.
that's the pivotal thing that you said back to yourself. And so,
Mhm.
okay, there's a couple of things that I want to break down here because I love this topic. And
Okay.
first of all, I want to really make a clear message to anybody listening to this, because what we do is we underestimate our potential all of the time because we base it on the so-called academic intelligence and the grades that we had in school. And then we let that determine how far we can go in life. And so one of the things that I'm really passionate about is understanding that in school, they measure one or two types of intelligence, right? And so
Yeah. Yep.
you have the left brain intelligence. So for those of you who don't know, your brain has two hemispheres, and the left hemisphere is the part that's like mathematical. It's logical. It understands computation and algorithms. It can read, write, comprehend, and understand information. Like, it's very black and white. And then the right side of the brain is like creativity, innovation, intuitiveness, empathy, compassion, big picture thinking, the arts, music. That's all the right brain stuff. And so, in K through 12 school, when I ask educators what percentage of the day do kids get exposed to left brain versus right brain, it's like 90-10, right? Like, hey, I get my 5% in Mr. Bollar's art class, and other than that, it's all left brain stuff. And so what happens is, if you're a right brainer like you are, Steve, or like my husband is, he's like an 80% right brainer, 20% left, is most of the time those kids go through school and they feel like they don't measure up to other students because they're not smart according to what school deems as smart, which is like IQ and logical reasoning and intelligence. And what I believe is that we have to start understanding, for the people that are listening to, that first of all, what we know is IQ is responsible for about 4 to 10% of a person's career success. Did you know that, Steve?
No, that I did not know. No.
4 to 10%. But yeah, all we do is focus on making sure that kids can read, write, and do science. And Lord knows we don't have time for the arts or creativity or, shoot, I remember a few years ago when we said we don't even have money for real art teachers. So we're going to put the program assistant in there and she's going to teach art all day.
Yep. Crazy.
And so what happens is we don't understand that there's so many different ways to be smart. So what I love about this story is you're like a CD student who goes on to freaking become a superintendent, who goes on to start your own business because you had this inner belief that, I will tell you, most people, I feel like, would not have had that confidence, but somehow you were either taught that, or that was ingrained in you, or you just had it to know, like, why not me? Why couldn't I do this? The other thing I want to tell you is Dan Pink has this amazing book called A Whole New Mind. And the subtitle, Steve, is Why Right Brainers Will Rule the Future. Did you know that?
No, that I didn't know. I'm getting that one.
Well, this is why you're so good at what you do, because actually your creativity and your relationship skills, your empathy skills, your compassion skills, all of those are right brain things. And you bring that to leadership, which does make you an anomaly.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I part of this is, you were saying, I had the wherewithal or the why not me before. When I found out that I was dyslexic, I found out my freshman year, second semester freshman year. I had a professor, and we had to do, and it was an art theories class of some sort. No, it was my sophomore year. We had to do an impromptu writing. So I did this impromptu writing class. The next class, she pulls me in, Dr. Burkett. She's like, Steve, are you dyslexic? And I was like, what'd you say about my mama? Because I didn't know what she was talking about. What, And she explained what it was. I was like, I might be. She says, well, you need to go to the student center, on campus, get evaluated so we can help you. And I'm like, all right. I didn't go. I wasn't going. And so she got, next couple classes, did you go? No. Next class, yeah, I went. She looked at me. No, you didn't. Then after the fourth or fifth class, she says, Steve, I need you to come with me. I says, okay. She walked me to the center. She took me there to get evaluated. And that's when we found out I had dyslexia. And most of the things that they taught me to help me with dyslexia, I was already doing. Here's the thing.
So are you saying that you didn't even want to know the results because you didn't even care about the results?
I could care less what she was talking about. I just knew I couldn't spell. What? I mean, truthfully, think college guy, what? You want to go where? Do what? Nah. What? No, I ain't doing that. So all I cared about was I need to pass the class. I love the class. Art theory? Are you kidding me? That's right up my wheelhouse. I just knew I couldn't spell that well. I was a horrible speller. But anyway, here's the thing. After I went through all this and I learned all this, I started to think back to my life. I'm so glad I didn't know I was dyslexic.
Mm.
If I knew I was dyslexic, I would have used that as a crutch.
Oh.
I would have said, well, I'm dyslexic. Well, I didn't know I was dyslexic. Oh, I couldn't have done that. I was dyslexic. I would have gotten an IEP, a 504, all kind of accommodations, right?
Yep.
But and nobody figured it out through school. And thank God they didn't. So
But
I'm glad that
Steve,
I
like
didn't.
when you were getting those grades, did you feel like you weren't smart?
In some cases, yes. I mean, I remember the emotions of not feeling smart. But
Okay.
then I would look at the people who were getting the good grades, and I'm like, they don't understand anything. I mean, just like,
Wow.
yeah, they're getting the grades, but we have a conversation, and we talk about, we're playing kickball in the backfield or whatever like that, and I come up and hey, here's a strategy we can use, and they're looking at me like, what? What are you talking
Wow.
about? And I'm
Yeah.
just like, these people are not that smart, and I couldn't put it all together. You're a kid, you're growing
Yeah.
up. But I knew there was something different about me. I knew that there's like, I can't be that dumb. I just know that I'm not. And I think it also
Wow.
helped that my brother and sister were bringing in B's and F's.
Yeah,
That might
yeah.
have
So
helped a
you
little
felt
too.
kind of
But
good
it's just,
about them.
yeah, yeah.
It's this funny
So,
though. Gosh, when you say that, okay, so here's a couple of
perfect
things.
storm kind of a thing.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I'm thinking because when you're talking about, so when we were I just got to go back. I don't know if this is relating or not. I'm just going to tell you where my brain goes. It kind of
Go
jumps
for it.
all over the place, kind of like
For
that.
some strange reason, I can follow you. Go ahead.
Yes, you can. So whenever you were talking about how you kind of just decided to bring your own flavor to leadership, and then I said, oh, not me. I tried to conform. And then when I couldn't, I kind of tried to take this other route and, get over here. And so, how sometimes, like, you're right. We kind of look for reasons why we are the way we are, because it's sometimes kind of hard to own. Like, I'm sitting there going, well, why didn't I have the courage to do what Steve did? And then you want to know what my next thought was? Because I just call an ace an ace, Steve. I was like, oh, well, that's because I'm a woman, because it's way harder for women than it is for men. And then I'm looking here on my screen at Steve, who is a black man. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Steve's a man, but he's a black man.
Yeah, be honest. It's the truth.
Right? So
Yeah.
like you had it way harder than a white woman would have it. So I can't use that as an excuse, but I'm sitting there kind of like thinking, how did he, man, this is like something in you that is remarkable. But you also knew that what made you different is also your special secret sauce, because relationships.
Yeah. I would agree. I knew that I was different. And here's the thing. Okay, let's go with the black man piece of this. Okay.
Yeah.
Where I grew up was a mostly black town. Okay.
Okay.
It was a small town in lower South Jersey. And there was a large number of African Americans living in this small town. So being a 6'7" black guy, what is your job to do?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Play
honestly,
basketball.
I can't wait for people to see the picture of you, because 100% you look like a basketball player.
I do. I look like, so when you're a tall kid growing up, your job, play basketball. That's it. Now, you want to talk about conforming? I did. I conformed like a champ. I went, yes, I got to play basketball. I got to get better at it. I played basketball. I was all in. It was, so as far as, conforming to what other people believe and whatever people think, I did that. I got quite good. And I think I'm not naturally talented in basketball. I'm not. But I worked hard at it.
Right.
And, I made, all state second team, stuff like that, whatever like that. I was probably the only person on all state second team who didn't get a scholarship. I did not get a scholarship to school for basketball. And to be honest with you, I never loved basketball. I did it because that's what people said I should do. Right?
Yes.
And so therefore, moving on, when I got to college, I didn't play. I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. This isn't who I am. This is what I want. And, and then moving on, that's where I think in college, when I decided not to play basketball And I decided I'm not going to do what everybody else thinks I should do. That's when that strength, I feel, so to speak, really came about as to going forward no matter what. My first school that I got a job at right out of college, very fortunate, very happy to do it, was in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. Anybody knows anything about Lawrenceville? Lawrenceville is right next to Princeton University.
Oh,
It's the town of Princeton. Nobody in that town looked like me. All right. Nobody. So on top of that, here I am. I'm in this elementary school. The school itself is across the street from Lawrenceville Prep, which is one of the most prestigious private schools in the country. This is where I'm working. And so that mindset of, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. And there were people, I very clearly, straight up racism took place, where I was working and the things that I did.
absolutely. I bet it did.
Yeah, like a beast it did. But this is what I'm doing. And I just maneuvered, I did what I could, and I kept telling myself, why not me? Why not me?
Not me.
Why
I
not
love
me?
that. So what is it that so this stand tall philosophy, tell us a little bit more about that. How do you help others create that confidence in themselves and not have to adhere to like these old labels that we've carried around with us for years, or how we're supposed to act, think, talk, walk, dress, all of that? Like, what is the stand tall philosophy?
Yeah. So the stand tall philosophy, obviously if you see me, I'm a tall guy. You can't miss it. So I started to think about what it was necessary, what things that connect with the world of tall people connect to leadership into your life. When I was in eighth grade was the year that everything went nuts for me. Beginning of eighth grade, I was 5'8". At the end of eighth grade, I was 6'3". 5'8". I know. Just imagine this. And this is not one school year. Not one calendar year, one school year. School started in September, I was 5'8". By June, by the end of school, I was 6'3". It was brutal. So one of the things that happened during this year is I started to slouch. I did not stand up straight. I slouched over a lot because I was standing out from everybody else around me. And if anybody ever dealt with a middle schooler, conformity is everything. Be like everyone else. And here I am, I'm growing super fast. My clothes were getting super small and tight. It was, and then on top of it, my voice was jacked up, the whole nine. So one day when I was walking home from school, I had a friend of mine, her name was Danielle. We're walking home from school. We turned onto her street. I lived on 9th Street. She lived on 7th Street. So we were on 7th Street where she was. She said, Steve, stay where you are. I said, okay. She walked around behind me. I'm like, what are you doing? She said, just stay there. I said, okay. She took one hand, she put it on my shoulder. She took her other hand, balled it up into a fist, and punched me in the middle of my back. And I was like, girl, what is wrong with you? What are you doing? But of course, when she punched me in the middle of my back, what did I do? I arched my back and I stood up straight. She said to me, Steve, you're a tall guy. Stop slouching down and stand tall. When she said that to me, everything switched. Everything switched in my head. Everything. I started at that moment, I was just like, oh my goodness, I get it now. This is who I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be a tall guy. Now, when I was the kid in school that loved school. I loved school, everything about it. I was in the band. I was in the art club. I was in the chess club. I was in the debate club. And I wasn't just in it. I was in student council. I was like the president or vice president in it. I loved that. And I realized when I was walking home from 7th Street to 9th Street, I was like, I'm a leader. I don't blend in. Leaders are not supposed to blend in.
Oh, I love that. Leaders are not supposed to blend in.
They're not. Leaders are supposed to stand out. Leaders are supposed to stand tall. And that's the beginnings of the stand tall philosophy. It doesn't matter if you're 4'2" or if you're 7'8", you can stand tall in your leadership.
So give me some other examples unrelated to height where you think you ask people to embrace that uniqueness that is them. And by the way, thanks for keeping on talking, because I had to mute myself. You heard my dogs go crazy in the background. So I was glad you just kept rolling with it, But yeah, it's like, give us other examples of what you teach people to do? Because, I'm not tall, but like,
Mhm.
how do you relay that to other pieces of life?
All right. So within the stand tall philosophy and everything like that, I do connect it to tallness sometimes because people can connect that kind of piece to it. And I say, when you're, first of all, tall person, we don't blend in. We don't, you pick us out right away. Right. So I tell other people when I do trainings with them, it's not your job to blend in with everyone else. That's that courage I give them. Your job is to stand out. How do you stand out? Do you stand out by doing conformity to everybody else? How do you stand out? How do you make yourself more than everyone else? That's that confidence, that piece. You got to develop that confidence. And we do strategies and things to develop your confidence so that you can stand out. You got to be a little vulnerable. Tall people everywhere, we're vulnerable. No matter, we can't, as much as you try to blend in, you can't. The other piece is this: tall people, we see the world at a different level. We have a vision. If you ever been in have you ever been in a crowd with a tall friend? What do? You tell your tall friend to get in the front, you grab their hand and say, go, because you can see where to go.
Yes.
So therefore, I teach people, you have to have a vision. You can't just go through life just blindly, just hoping things work out. You got to have a vision. As I said earlier in the beginning of this, when the vision is clear, decisions are easy. Right? Tall people, we have a vision. We can see over the crowd. We make good decisions because we know where it is that we're going to go. That's what I try to tell people to do. And then the last piece of it is tall people, we don't fit. we don't fit in car. I don't fit in cars. Don't get me started on airplanes, doorways, ceiling fans. These are all major issues in the world of tall people. So we always have to adjust, have to change. So what I do is I tell people, you always got to adjust. You have to change. Things don't go your way. Things are not designed for you. This world is not designed for me. It isn't. I'm too tall. I'm living in a world too small for me. Yeah. But you make adjustments. You have to change. So that's a lot of what it is that I teach to people. And I use those references to start with, but basically it comes down to those basic things. Don't think you have to blend in. Don't think you have to have a vision for your direction of where you're going, and you have to adjust.
You have to have a vision for a direction that you're going, for the direction you are going. I love that.
Yes.
So I have a question. As we are nearing the end of this, what is one piece of advice you have for our listeners? I mean, you've given several, but just to kind of summarize this, what do you think that would help all of us with all of these different little philosophies that you've been talking about?
Well, I think the one thing is reflection. If you notice, the running theme through a lot of this that I've talked about is I did a lot of reflecting on me. And yes. and mind you, some people get into reflective spot and they spiral. Don't spiral. Get to reflect on what it is that you really want. What works best for who you are? What things do you do? That work, and what things that don't work, and you fix it. The one thing that I love to do is I look at things that I don't like and I don't do it. And it's like when I go and I do professional development or I do training for people. You've been in trainings and things where they're just horrible. Yes. It's like, oh my gosh, this training. I don't do them. Plain and simple. All the stuff I don't like, I don't do. And because I reflect on it, reflect on the experiences you've had in life, reflect on everything, and then say, okay, this is what I value. This is what I respect and value in my life. This is how I reflect. I'm reflecting on some things. All right, now move forward and go.
I love that. So it's basically, how do we honor our strengths and the things that we value and create a vision for our life that matches those, but also know that we always have to remain growth oriented. So I love
that reflective piece. You always have to be growth oriented. That reflective piece is everything. One of the things that I do, I journal. Check that out. A guy who's dyslexic.
I know. I think that's why I fell in love with you on our interview. I was like, oh my goodness, a guy who journals. I mean, I do have a thing for basketball players. So I was telling my husband, I have to tell you, Steve. I was like, oh, so I have an interview today, with Steve. Remember the 6'7" guy that looks like a basketball player? I do have a thing for people who look like athletes. I'm just going to tell you.
There you go. I get it. I totally get it. I get it. But yeah, I mean, I mean, part of the purpose of me journaling, and I could care less if I spelled it right or
Yeah,
not,
yeah. Then you
but
add the
it's
journal.
that, yeah, but it's that reflective piece. It's that piece of just reflecting on what's happening with me and where I'm going. I mean, depression is all about what happened in the past. Anxiety is about what's happening in the future. I want to stay in the middle of that and just reflect on where I'm going so that the future's good. And,
Yeah, that's one of the top happiness habits too. Did you know that, journaling?
oh, really? Okay.
Yep, it's like one of the top 5 or 6 happiness habits that they talk
Mm.
about.
Well, there you go. Well, I'm on it.
You are on it.
I
Okay,
try to be.
so I have a question for you. Where can
Mhm.
people, like, do you work just with education, or you work with other groups too, right?
I work with all groups. I really do. I mean, my wheelhouse has been education, but leadership is leadership, period.
That's right.
Climate and culture is climate and culture, period. So, yeah, I work in all different groups.
Yeah, that's kind of like, I'm like, hey, I'm not just a happiness coach in education. Like, I don't care what
Mhm.
business you're in, you need a happiness coach or you need a
Right,
leadership coach, right?
right,
So where can
right.
people find you?
Well, if you look up Stand Tall Steve just about anywhere, you'll see me. StandTallSteve.com. If you're looking at mainly my leadership stuff, it's standtall-leadership.com. Twitter, Stand Tall Steve. Facebook, Stand Tall Steve. LinkedIn,
Yeah.
Stephen Bollar for LinkedIn.
And I'll drop
That's
all
not
of those social links. I
Mhm.
think you sent them to me. I'll make sure and put them in the
Sure.
show notes for anybody who's
Awesome.
looking. Okay, so I end a lot of my interviews by asking this one question. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Let's go.
How are you, Stand Tall Steve, reaching for more joy in your life right now?
How am I reaching for more joy in my life right now? Well, one of the things I've done just recently, I got a new journal. I'm really excited about this thing. It's
Mm.
an organizer, or
Like a
it's called
planner?
self. It's like a planner journal kind of a thing. It's a new one. So it's called self journal. It's a
Mhm.
self journal. Anyway, in there, what you do is you make these goals for every 13 weeks. It's a 13-week plan. So I have these new goals that I have created. And I didn't just make these goals to be focused around better job and outcomes for my money. One of the things that I value greatly is humor, and I value family. So one of the things that I'm reaching to give me joy is I put in here as one of my goals to connect with family every day.
Mm.
And when I mean connect with family, it's not like, hey, what's going on? Like, I want to have a half decent, if not completely decent, conversation with someone in my family every day, because I found that makes me smile. That makes me happy. And like I said, I've tried all the emotions. I like happy. So that's what I'm going to do.
I love that. You know,
Mhm.
I just had that thought recently because my husband and I have been vegging out in the evenings watching Schitt's Creek, and
I just got onto that show.
we did too. We just got
Oh my
on to
gosh.
it's because the dad was an American Pie, and I just loved that
Yes.
crazy movie, and I loved how he acted in there, and he acts the same way in this series.
Yes. And then his son, David. Oh my gosh. It's so funny. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Did you know that the father-son actors in that movie are real father and son, and they're the producers
Yeah.
of that show?
Yes. And Tryla, I think it's Tryla.
Yeah.
That's the sister.
She's a sister? No way.
She's the sister. Yes. Isn't that
Oh,
crazy?
that is
Yeah.
so crazy. Well, I'm loving
I
that
think
show
so. That's
too.
what I heard. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway.
Okay,
So
well,
anyway,
but
you're vegging
I
out. Mhm.
decided today, when I was like sitting down with my gratitude journal and I was kind of going over my intentions for the week, that my husband and I, because we're empty nesters, that we need to get back to having our nightly tea time where we connect with each other and we actually have conversation rather than just
Mhm.
laughing through our Netflix. So
Yeah.
I think that that's a great way to find more joy and meaning in your life. And it's funny because I'm kind of on the same wavelength. Now, I will tell you that Scott Strobel, he's going to kind of roll his eyes when I bring this back up because he's a little bit more of the introvert, avoider, like, let's not
Mhm.
talk about anything too deep. And then his wife's always wanting to talk about deep things. So
Yeah.
today, when he gets
Yeah.
home, and I'm gonna be like, hey, we're gonna have our nightly tea time again and have conversation.
Yeah. He's like, oh, great. That's Steve. Gosh, they're
Yeah,
doing it.
exactly. Oh my gosh, it's been such an honor. I so appreciate your vulnerability, you
Oh,
sharing your
sure.
stories, your confidence. It just oozes from you. But I
Well, thank
love
you.
that you just want people to honor what makes them unique.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's just something, everybody has these things that are about you. Embrace that. And why not you? Why
Why
not?
not you? I
Why not
love
you?
that.
That's it.
For those of you who are listening, try, maybe you need to make a little sticky note, put it on your computer, put it on your
Yep.
bathroom mirror, right?
Hmm.
Why not me? I love
Hmm.
that, Steve. Thank you
That's a
so
good
much.
idea. Yep. You're welcome so much. I love this. I have a new, I said before when you were on my podcast, I have a new friend. We're
Yeah,
friends. We're in it to win it now. That's
we're
the best.
connectors. We're
There you
connectors.
go. Awesome.